In a decision that reverberated from Wall Street to Shanghai and echoed through the corridors of power in every major financial hub, a new chapter in global trade was written. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down the sweeping tariffs imposed under former President Trump, fundamentally reshaping the landscape of international commerce and trade relations. On July 30, 2025, the court ruled that the president's broad, unilateral tariff powers had overstepped constitutional bounds, sending shockwaves through international markets and prompting immediate responses from investors and governments worldwide. For years, businesses and consumers struggled with volatile trade rules, unpredictable tariffs, and rising costs that affected everything from raw materials to groceries on the shelves. Now, the ruling promises a new era of stability for some, but also raises fresh questions about America's economic future, the limits of executive power, and the potential for new legislative battles. The story of these tariffs is one of disruption, a promise to protect American industries and jobs, but at the cost of global retaliation, higher prices, and deep domestic division over the best path forward. The court's decision is more than a legal footnote. It's a turning point for U.S. economic policy, the balance of power in Washington, and the way America engages with the world. As the world reacts, the implications will touch everything from manufacturing jobs and supply chains to the price of everyday goods, shaping the choices of businesses and families alike. This is not just about tariffs. It's about America's evolving role in a rapidly changing global economy and the uncertain road that lies ahead for international trade and cooperation. To fully understand the Supreme Court's recent ruling, we need to revisit the pivotal events of 2018, when the Trump administration launched its ambitious America First trade agenda, promising to reshape the nation's economic relationships. Breaking with decades of pro-globalization policy, President Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to justify sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, arguing that these measures were necessary for national security and to protect American industries from foreign competition. This broad and controversial interpretation of national security powers sparked immediate legal challenges, as critics argued the president was using national security as a pretext for economic protectionism, an area traditionally reserved for Congress, not the executive branch. Lawsuits from importers and industry groups quickly followed, claiming the administration's actions were unconstitutional and overstepped executive authority, igniting a fierce and highly publicized debate over the limits of presidential power in trade. While some U.S. steel producers and workers benefited from the tariffs, many American manufacturers faced higher costs for raw materials, and global trading partners retaliated with their own tariffs, escalating tensions and sparking protests abroad. The legal battle wound through the courts for years, reflecting deep divisions over trade, presidential authority, and the proper balance of power between the branches of government. At its core, the conflict was about who truly controls U.S. trade policy: Congress, with its constitutional authority, or the president, wielding executive power in the name of national security. That fundamental question set the stage for a dramatic Supreme Court showdown, the outcome of which would have lasting implications for American trade policy and the separation of powers. The heart of the legal battle was the definition of national security under Section 232. The Supreme Court wasn't judging the wisdom of tariffs, but whether the law gave the president unchecked power to impose them. Plaintiffs argued that Trump's broad use of national security was unconstitutional, letting the president bypass Congress on trade. The government countered that Congress had intentionally delegated this authority for flexibility in a changing world. Justices pressed both sides. Could any import be tariffed under the guise of security? Where was the limit? The court's skepticism signaled concern over giving the executive a blank check for economic policymaking. The case forced a reckoning over the separation of powers and the true meaning of national security and trade. The outcome would define the boundaries of presidential authority for years to come. On July 30, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a 6-3 decision that set new limits on presidential power under Section 232. The majority, led by Chief Justice Roberts, ruled that tariffs must have a direct, plausible link to national defense, not just broad economic competition. The court found the Trump-era tariffs relied on an overly broad definition of national security, invalidating their legal basis. Effective immediately, the steel and aluminum tariffs were struck down, and importers could seek refunds. The ruling warned future presidents broad protectionist tariffs need clear congressional backing. In dissent, 3 justices argued the court was overreaching, but the majority insisted on judicial oversight. The decision reasserted that even in national security, executive power has limits. Chief Justice Roberts' opinion was a sharp rebuke of executive overreach. He acknowledged the link between economic strength and defense, but stressed that the Constitution gives Congress, not the President, primary authority over trade. The court introduced a new standard: tariffs under Section 232 require a clear, direct threat to national defense, not just economic hardship. The majority dismantled the government's rationale, noting that targeting allies like Canada as security threats strained credibility. The ruling closed the door on using Section 232 for general economic protectionism. Ultimately, the court reaffirmed its role as the final interpreter of the law, even in sensitive areas like national security. The message was clear: the executive branch is not above the law. Congressional statutes have limits, and it's the court's job to define them. This decision rebalances power between Congress and the President on trade. Markets responded instantly to the Supreme Court's decision. Stocks surged, especially in sectors hit hardest by tariffs. Automakers, machinery companies, and agricultural exporters all saw gains, reflecting optimism about lower costs and fewer trade wars. Business groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce hailed the ruling as a victory for free enterprise and legal certainty. Importers and manufacturers welcomed relief from unpredictable costs, while steel workers and domestic producers warned of renewed foreign competition. The decision triggered a scramble across supply chains as companies reevaluated sourcing and logistics. Port authorities and logistics firms braced for increased imports, while some industries lobbied Congress for new protections. The American economy began a rapid adjustment to a post-tariff landscape, one marked by both relief and anxiety. The ruling set off a massive recalibration of business strategies nationwide. The new era brings both opportunity and uncertainty for American industry. The Supreme Court's ruling has upended the political landscape ahead of the 2028 election. The current administration touts the decision as a win for the rule of law and economic stability, but faces pressure from labor and industrial interests. For Trump and his supporters, the ruling fuels a narrative of judicial overreach and betrayal, energizing his base. In key swing states, the loss of tariffs complicates campaign strategies for both parties. Candidates must now propose new ways to support American industry without broad executive tariffs. The debate over trade, jobs, and globalization is set to intensify, becoming a central campaign issue. The decision shifts the focus back to Congress, where new trade policies will be forged. The political aftershocks will shape American economic policy for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision sent ripples through global markets and foreign capitals, sparking immediate reactions from investors, policymakers, and business leaders around the world. The ruling was seen as a pivotal moment, with many wondering how it would reshape the landscape of international trade and economic relations. U.S. allies like the EU, Canada, and Japan welcomed the ruling, seeing it as a return to rules-based trade and a chance to lift retaliatory tariffs. For these countries, the decision signaled a renewed commitment to fair competition and the international agreements that underpin global commerce. American exporters stand to benefit as foreign duties on their goods are rolled back, opening up new opportunities in overseas markets. This could mean increased sales for U.S. manufacturers, farmers, and technology firms, helping to boost the American economy and support jobs at home. The decision helps repair strained alliances and could revive cooperation on broader global issues, from climate change to security. Restoring trust among allies may also pave the way for new trade agreements and joint initiatives in the future. But the ruling also complicates U.S. strategy toward China, removing a key tool for pressuring Beijing on trade practices. This shift forces American negotiators to rethink their approach, as they seek new ways to address concerns about unfair competition and intellectual property theft. Some fear a flood of cheap steel, which could threaten domestic industries, while others see an opportunity for renewed multilateral action. The debate highlights the delicate balance between protecting local jobs and embracing open markets. The decision signals that America First protectionism has legal limits, strengthening international trade norms and reinforcing the importance of global cooperation. It sets a precedent that could influence future policy decisions. For global businesses, the new environment promises more predictability, but also new challenges. Companies will need to adapt to shifting regulations and evolving trade relationships, staying agile in a rapidly changing world. The world is watching to see if the U.S. will embrace a more collaborative approach to trade, and whether this moment marks the start of a new era in international economic relations. The Supreme Court's decision marks the end of an era of unilateral tariffs and the start of a new chapter in U.S. trade policy. The debate now shifts from presidential power to congressional action. Experts say the path forward requires targeted, bipartisan strategies, like anti-dumping laws and investment in domestic innovation. The focus will be on strengthening American industry through smart policy, not blanket tariffs. Internationally, the U.S. faces a test. Will it rebuild alliances and lead on trade, or retreat inward? The ruling is a call to action for lawmakers, business, and citizens to redefine America's role in the global economy. The challenges ahead are complex, but the opportunity for a more stable, prosperous future is real. The story of American trade is far from over. It's just beginning.